Welcome to the Masterbooks podcast, where we bring you conversations that will strengthen your biblical worldview and the faith of your family. I'm Jennifer White, publicist at Masterbooks, a division of New Leaf Publishing Group. As host of this show, I'll be opening the doors to the Masterbooks family library of books, authors, and curriculum. For over 45 years, our company has been about one thing: ink on paper to touch eternity. In a world increasingly at war with God, we are publishing to partner with you to disciple your family, the church, and the nations.
Well, hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Masterbooks podcast. We are so glad you are tuning in to join us today. Anna, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Today, we're talking with Anna about homeschooling more than one child, multiple ages, and using various curriculum in the homeschool library, our Masterbooks Homeschool Library of Curriculum, to teach multiple ages at one time, making your day a little less hectic. And so we want to share Anna's wisdom with you. Anna is a homeschool mom of 6, and she works for Masterbooks as well as a moderator in the Moms of Masterbooks Facebook group. I bet a lot of you already know her, but you'll get to know her a little more today and see her family experience. And hopefully you'll be picking up some tips that she has learned from her own experience today. So welcome to the podcast. Anna, we want to find out from you, like, why you started homeschooling before we get into the nitty gritty of how you use the books and which books you use and how it's worked for your family. Like, why did you start homeschooling and what keeps you homeschooling?
Well, my husband and I were baby Christians. It was 15 years ago when there was hardly any social media. I don't even know if we owned a computer because we were just starting out. Mm-hmm. And we were looking at options for schooling for our oldest daughter. And a member of the church said, "Hey, you should homeschool." Well, that kind of seemed odd to my husband and I because we were both public schooled. Okay. And we prayed about it and we talked to our families. Our families told us we would ruin our children, that homeschooling was a horrible option. And we actually started with 2 people in our corner that said that we could do this. This is what God wanted us to do, and supported us. And we really prayed about it and decided to take 1 year at a time. And since then, I have graduated 2 students. My son just graduated this year, and my oldest graduated in 2020.
Awesome. And we expect to have Anna and her son back on the show soon so they can share with you his experience of being homeschooled with Masterbooks curriculum and graduating and how it prepared him for life.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that. Now we want to get to the curriculum. What curriculum have you used from Masterbooks that has helped you to homeschool these many different ages at one time? How does that work for you? How does it save time for you? Just give us the lowdown on what your favorite books are and all the things.
Well, I personally love all the books, so it's hard to choose which ones are my favorites. Learning as a family can look different for everybody. For us, it just depends on the needs that we have. Mm-hmm. Sometimes learning together means just out of one book. Sometimes it means doing projects together, different things like that. One of my ultimate favorite things from Masterbooks is the Adams chart timeline. That is.
Oh, yes.
That's what, yes. I'm not going to open it up because it's so big, but that is a favorite. And we have used it for all of the histories that we have done. And my children have loved it. They have laid on the floor for hours, just following history, drawing, and notebooking through it.
Okay.
Some more of our favorites are the God Created series, these coloring books.
Yes.
There's 8 of them all together, and we use these with science, or if a particular student is learning about animals, or we've even used the people, God Created People, when we were learning with One Race, One Blood.
Okay. So what ages are you teaching that like those coloring books?
I use them from preschool all the way up to about 10 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. Another favorite of ours that all of our children love is God's Big Book of Animals.
Yes.
Our children, again, sit for hours reading from our preschooler all the way up. Even our high schoolers enjoy reading the books to the younger kids.
Okay. That book has so many beautiful pictures in it.
Yes, it
And it's
does.
like the size of an encyclopedia.
Yes, it is beautiful. I don't know if there's a book out there like it from someone else. It is very high quality.
Great. I'm glad y'all like it.
Another favorite that I've used with our older three is Great for God.
That's one of my favorites. I'm looking forward to having the author on our show.
We have loved reading about all the different missionaries, and we tie this in with history as well.
Okay.
Another one that we love with science, we've also used it in a morning basket, is The Wonders of Creation.
Very popular.
And we've used it. I will have science notebooks for the kids and all ages, and they draw what we talk about. So my high schooler's drawing and what he writes is a lot more detailed than what my preschooler writes, which you may or may not be able to tell what they drew, but I will write the word that we're learning, like hummingbird, and they'll try and draw it. So it includes them without making them feel left out.
Gotcha. That's a brilliant way to do it.
Another favorite, which we take this on the road and we use the trivia with it. It is a huge family favorite, is Meet the Chiefs.
Okay, that's a newer one.
Yes. It's a fun way. We took it on a road trip with us when we went to see Mount Rushmore, and my 9-year-old really enjoyed learning about the different presidents. Another family favorite that we did with all ages, and we even included friends, was art.
Oh, yes. Living art lessons. So what ages did you teach that to?
We did it from preschool up to high school.
Okay.
And again, what we expected out of the high schoolers was a little bit more detail than what we expected out of the preschoolers, but it was really good. We even added different activities for the high schoolers to make it a little bit more in depth for them, more artist studies, digging deeper, so that way it would fit their need because it is geared for 4th through 6th grade.
Right. So you've really been able to expand many of these books to much further than what we, recommend for the specific age groups. Like you're saying, this one is for. And I love that it's working for your whole family and even your other people that you added in. That's really great.
I love that Masterbook says that the curriculum is a tool and we can adapt it to fit our needs. And because there isn't a high school art course, we were able to fit the needs of the high schoolers, keeping that biblical worldview, but yet expand it enough to make it meaty enough for them.
That's so good. I love that. Thank you for sharing it. Anything else you want to tell us?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Where Faith Grows is, I have used this with my 3rd grader and my kindergartner, who have both loved it. And we've also added in the academy courses, and they have really loved the characters and the extra books that come in with the academy course, and just listening to the author read. And we will also be using it this upcoming year with my 1st grader and preschooler, because my 1st grader, she'll be in 1st grade, loved it so much. She wants to keep doing it. So we are going to go through it again.
That's sweet that she'll get to do it again. It'll just drive it deeper into her heart, and she'll be able to do it with her little sister and probably want to teach her a little bit.
Yes. Some more sciences that we've done is God's Design for Life. We have done the beginners with the regular course in a co-op with friends.
Mhm.
We have really liked that you can pair these courses up. Another year we did the God's Design for Heaven and Earth. And my son that graduated taught my younger son out of this book and the regular book.
Okay, and so
And
that's God's Design series.
yes.
And
And
so
those
it's written for what ages? Remind me.
it's 3rd through 8th grade.
Okay.
And my high school son loves science.
Okay.
And he was bummed he didn't get to do the God's Design series. So I asked him if he would teach the God's Design series to my younger son.
Mhm.
And he was on the 2nd, 3rd grade border where he couldn't do beginners was almost too easy for him, but the
Okay.
regular course was too hard. So my older son taught him and pulled the activities from the regular course and modified it to fit our needs that we had at the time.
That is impressive that he was able to teach it and modify it. So that just tells you how easily any mom can adapt it into her own homeschool plan.
Yes, definitely. Another favorite was we did Sea, Soil, and Sky together
Mhm.
with family. We used it for 3rd through 5th grade, and the kids really enjoyed that. And we had science journals, and we did all of the activities that it called for, and all of the kids loved it.
Good.
I think it's great to include friends. I think
Mhm.
it's fun to find other families using masterbooks and including them because it just brings out that joy of learning more when you're doing it with friends.
Right. And then they can talk to each other about it when they're at church. You mentioned earlier before we started the show that a lot of the people that you go to church with homeschool. And so I can imagine that it would be fun for the kids to talk about the lessons that they've done together and share that love of learning. I love it.
Yes. For high school, we have used biology with multiple kids at
Okay.
one time. We did this with 9th through 10th graders,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a lot of fun because they got to do the labs together. And my daughter, who was in 8th grade at the time, she wasn't able to do the biology. It was just a little too much for her, but she participated in the labs and really loved that hands-on
Okay.
science aspect. And now she's doing biology on the academy with Brian Young,
Mm-hmm.
and she can see the correlation. She sees, oh, I remember this lab. I remember learning this. So that has helped her because she got to just sit in. And I think it's okay to have students, if they're a little too young, to sit in because they still enjoy it, especially if it's hands-on. They may not fully grasp it, but later on down the road, they start connecting things and they can go back and remember, oh, yeah, I remember when we did this. I
Right.
remember how this turned out.
Yeah, it's always good to review. And I love that that is built into our curriculum anyway, the ability
Yes.
to review. But it's really great when they've heard it more than one time over different years because you're teaching it to many different children over the time span. I love
Yes.
that. Thank you for sharing those. You have more?
I do.
Okay.
The last ones that I have done with multiple students, Elements of Faith, my son and daughter were actually using the chemistry course. So
Uh-huh.
they were doing it together.
Okay.
And they also did Elements of Faith to learn the periodic table together as well. We used it for more as a devotional and a Bible,
Mm-hmm.
but they really enjoyed doing it together. And then when we had the chemistry together, they were able to connect the periodic table and the chemistry.
That's great. And I just want to, we've mentioned the elements of faith before on the podcast, but isn't it amazing that you can have a pre-chemistry book that you really want to use as a devotional, as a family Bible time?
And I grew up in public school, so when they explained chemistry, it was not from a biblical worldview. So
Mm-hmm.
going through that with my kids, I was like, oh, he is the living water. Things made sense, and it ties into that biblical worldview where it was even excited for me to learn where the Bible comes in with chemistry. It just, before it didn't make sense, and now I feel like a light bulb went off.
Oh, I love that. I love when the moms tell us about what they've learned as they've taught their students. And then on our last podcast, Carissa talked about the course that she took for herself. You know, she just took one of the high school courses for herself. When we love seeing that love of learning that we try to build into our curriculum, going in, even into the adults' lives.
I enjoy that too. I enjoy learning with my kids and alongside with my kids because I don't know everything. And it always goes back to God and creation. And when the kids say, hey, Mom, did you know this? A lot of the times I didn't. And we'll pull out our Bibles and dig deeper. And I love that about Masterbooks is it allows us to dig deeper and find what God's word says. And you can see it throughout every single course.
I love that. I worked with Masterbooks before we started putting together homeschool curriculum. And I just love how our mission statement, which is ink on paper to touch eternity, for over 45 years, that's been our mission statement. And as in 2012, when we started doing homeschool curriculum, it's really just broadened the scope of how we're fulfilling that mission. And I love hearing your story and how that's really happening in your own family. And with you graduating 2 students already, we know that they are going out into the world to impact the people that they work with or do life with.
Absolutely. It lays a strong foundation for our children, no matter where they are in their walk of faith. Masterbooks meets them there, and it helps them grow, and it encourages them to grow and see for themselves what God's word says about things. And I love that the different authors bring different perspectives. There's a lot of things that we know, but I didn't think of it that way, or I've never seen it that way. Just the different perspectives that they bring to help the student understand where the biblical worldview comes in.
Absolutely. That is a really fun part of my job. It's getting to work with the authors and brilliant people. Oh my goodness, the things that they've studied and how they know the word and make it apply to astronomy and genetics and it just blows my mind.
Yes, I agree. The last, I don't have it, the last book that my children have done together, they actually did independently, and that was American history.
Okay.
And then they worked on the project together. My son and my daughter have completely different interests, and my son will get caught up in the reading, and so he reads faster and rabbit trails in different places, whereas my daughter doesn't. And it was a fun way for them to be independent, but also do the projects together. And they created videos on what they had been learning.
Oh, how fun. I don't know that I've seen their videos. I'd like to see it.
We didn't share them. They didn't want me to share them.
Okay. You never know about high schoolers, right? Teenagers.
I absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Well, we love your Masterbooks and action shots that you share on our social media. Thank you for giving our community glimpses of the fun you're having learning together and just showing us how your students are using the different books. I love that.
Thank you. I enjoy it, and my children enjoy it. And being able just to show that little glimpse of, we don't always do it as the book says, and that's okay. And just encouraging moms to use the curriculum as a tool and not the master.
Right. Right. I love that. So I want to take a minute before we go into our next segment and just invite you, the listener, to review our podcast. Let us know what you like about it, what you want to hear on it. And your reviews will help other people find the Master Books podcast. So we would really appreciate it. And what we'd like to do is give one reviewer a shout out every week on the podcast. So we can't wait to share your name and a little bit about your family in your review when we do our next episode. So now, Anna, this is one of my favorite parts of the podcast. It's the segment called Off the Shelf and Into Your Heart. And I can see your bookshelf behind you. You have so many, probably every one of the books that we publish. But I'd love to know which book, and it could be anything from our parenting books to apologetics to our homeschool curriculum, which book has impacted your heart or the heart of one of your family members the most?
That's tough because I love every Master Books book, and I have learned something from every book that I've read. I think it would have to be, in this season of my life, launching my second child, it would have to be Raise Them Up.
Okay.
By Israel Wayne, because in chapter, what chapter is it here? In chapter 5, it talks about the power of influence and how when we start out parenting, sometimes we get it backwards. We try and influence our toddlers and control our older kids when it should be opposite. And it says, let me read here in chapter 5. What will it be worth if our children grow up to have a good career and great financial success, but don't know the Lord? If our priorities are toward worldly gain rather than sacrifice for God's or Christ's kingdom, why do we think that our children will have a different goal than us?
Wow. I love that.
This really speaks to the heart of Master Books, where ink on paper to affect eternity. And it really speaks to me on who I'm allowing to influence my children. And I recently heard a gentleman, he asked me, he said, if I were to take a white glove and stick it in mud, would the mud become glovey or would the glove become muddy? And our children are that white glove, and all the influences of the world are the mud. And when we stick our children in there, are they going to become muddy or is the world going to become glovey? And it's so important to disciple our children. And that's why I love Where Faith Grows, because the heart behind that is discipling our children at home and how it's our responsibility, not the church's responsibility, to bring up our children and disciple them. One of my favorite quotes was from Jessica, that when she said that discipleship isn't complicated, discipleship is intentional. And that is something that has really stuck out to me, having little ones and launching big ones on influences and discipleship.
I love it. And that book has come up more than once. The last episode we filmed, that was one of their favorite books too. So we hope to have Israel on. Hopefully that'll be our next episode. We'll have Israel and one other person join us to talk about another one of his books, but we'll definitely get to that one as well. So thank you, especially for reading that quote. That's wisdom that can take all of us a long way. So in our last little segment, we want to talk about, we're sharing like a voice of experience, and you definitely have experience, and you've been homeschooling for quite some time. As you've mentioned, you've graduated too. You still have several more to go. And Randy encourages us, Randy Pratt, the president of Master Books, he encourages us to celebrate the wins and to share the things that we've learned with other people so they can get it faster than we did. And so what would that piece of wisdom be that you would give to your younger self that might help another mom of Master Books?
As I said at the beginning of the show, when we first started, we didn't have hardly any support. Our families were so against us homeschooling because we would ruin our children. And looking back, I would tell myself that my children were not designed for a box. My children were designed for a kingdom. You're going to have people who support you, and you will always have people who do not support you. But take a step back and remember that there will be fruit of our labor, and that in the end, it is worth it. I have had people in my family, my in-laws, and even my intermediate family that have said, wow, we are so glad you guys homeschooled. We can see the difference. What we said before, that was so wrong. And I would go back and just say, hey, the fruit is there, Anna. Just be patient, because the years are so short, but the days are long. And sometimes it feels like those days are never going to end, or your child's never going to get multiplication or understand what a noun is, no matter how many times you try and tell them or show them. But the fruit is there. And in the long run, if you just focus on their heart and discipleship, it will come.
That is great advice. And I love that you're already getting that feedback and sort of an apology from people that, spoke against it. You really were a pilgrim or a pioneer in your family, and you do have the fruit of it. And what it made me think of is that verse that says, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain. And you let him build the house by using curriculum that helps you disciple your children and keeps them in the word in every subject. And I applaud you, Anna, and I'm so thankful that you and the other moms of Masterbooks are discipling your kids so that they can go out and be the light in a very darkening world. So it's been a pleasure to interview you today. Thank you for taking the time to be on the show. And we look forward to having you and your son back so we can talk to him about his experience with Masterbooks. So we're glad you joined us today. And friends that have been listening, we really appreciate you listening today. We are glad that you're downloading the podcast and being a part of this time we're spending together. We are doing it for you, hoping that you take away some insights and how to homeschool your family using Masterbooks, how to make it easier, which books you might want to try, how you can do it differently than you've been doing it. And we just want to encourage you. So God bless you. Join us here for the next episode. And we bless you today with that confidence in God that he is going to carry you with his wisdom, with his strength.
Hey, thanks for joining the Masterbooks podcast. This was fun, and we are really glad you were with us. We invite you to check out masterbooks.com. We have a big library of books that will feed the faith of your family. And hey, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss an episode. We'll see you next time.